Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Truth Talks where we go over our client stories, and today we are featuring Brent. Now, Brent has been working with us for a while now. We've had a pretty extended building phase that we've been going through, and we're going to take a brief intermission from that to run a fat loss phase before a vacation and then return back to building after. He's made an amazing amount of muscle mass gains and strength gains, and we've done tons of technique analysis, so his form is also on point. So I'm very proud of him, and it's really cool to hear this journey because I feel like for Brendan, you'll hear him talk about it. He's really been able to use fitness and nutrition as a way to add structure, routine, and organization into his lifestyle. So I'm excited for you to listen to this episode and sit back, relax, and enjoy. All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Truth Talks. And today's episode, we have Brent. Brent, how are you doing?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Awesome, man.
How are you doing, Parris?
Yeah, I'm good, man. Me and all my buddies over here, we're all good. We're all good. I'm really excited for this podcast. I think it's going to be a relatable story, and I want to keep this kind of focused around your story. Now, just as a little bit of context, Brent and I have been working together for several months now, and we've been in a building phase. So we've been building some good muscle mass. He's got a good structure in terms of his bone structure. His insertions are pretty aesthetic. So we managed to put some muscle that's been sitting well. So I think we pushed up body weight around 15 pounds at this point. So we made some good solid gains, but I really wanted to dive into kind of your starting point and where you were at with your life before starting lifting, and what kind of pushed you into taking action. I think that would be kind of a good kind of starting point.
Yeah, honestly, the thing that really got me into the gym, it was basically mental health. Like I was at a pretty low point in my life. I kind of dug myself into a hole, and I was sitting in it, waiting for somebody to come help me out. And then eventually, I realized that the only person that could really take me out of that spot was myself. I remember kind of looking in the mirror one day. I was just talking to Parris about it, but woke up one day and looked at myself in the mirror, and it sounds pretty cheesy, but didn't like what I saw, and the only person that can change that is me. So that's when I kind of flipped the switch and I made the decision to make some change. So got a gym membership, talked to some buddies, started working out with some buddies, and I took it from there. I gained some pretty decent size at that point, but the thing that's always been a challenge for me has been nutrition and eating. Mm-hmm. So I've always kind of going back and forth with that.
Yeah. Totally fair, man. Do you mind walking us through a little bit of your lifestyle, kind of before you started lifting, if you're comfortable sharing, what were kind of some habits that you had? What kind of lifestyle were you living then?
It was college, man. Drinking and not eating much because I didn't have much money, but staying up late, playing a lot of video games, hanging out with my buddies, and partying and stuff. But yeah, it hits a certain point where it's no longer fun, and you kind of wake up and you got to go get stuff done, right? So
100%, man, 100%. So when you kind of flip that switch into kind of just, we'll call it getting your life kind of together and starting prioritizing yourself and your health, what were some of the first initial differences that you felt within just kind of your overall self?
Well, it ties into everything, right? Mm-hmm. When you start getting to the gym initially, I think the thing that holds a lot of people back initially from getting that gym membership and actually showing up is the fear of going there and being judged by everybody that's there. Because you go in there and as a guy, there's a bunch of really built dudes lifting heavy weights, and you're going and hitting a bench press and you have 10 pounds on either side if you were like me, really weak, right? So there's a fear of going there and being judged, but then there's also the fear of when you get there and you go to lift, you then realize, and it's confirmation that you are weak, right? So you can sit there and you can convince yourself oh no, I'm all right, I'm pretty strong, but then you go there and you go to do a lift and that's confirmation you are at a low point. The thing to keep in mind and the thing to remember is that is the low point. And as long as you stay consistent, you're not going to hit that point again. And then every other person in that gym, no matter how big they are, they started from somewhere as well.
Yeah.
So nobody's really looking at you beginning your journey and judging you. They're just happy to see you there. Like everybody started from that point and they all understand that point.
100%, man. I love that. And yeah, as you said, no matter, there's a famous saying like a master of anything was once a beginner. And sometimes we forget that. And we forget that everybody's had such a journey. Like the physiques that you see, they've also been on such a journey. And, you know, we all start with just a bar, you know, kind of thing. But I like what you said. It's like it's only up from that point. Like when you first make that jump to start taking action, you're only going to get better. Right. So I think that's the part that people need to be fueled by. Instead of looking at how much they have to go and how disappointing their starting point is, they need to start thinking about it's only going to get better from here. And that's a principle that applies to a lot of things. But I think that's really, really powerful. And then kind of what got you hooked? Like once you start to see some progress, or once your mental state started changing, like what clicked and you're like, okay, this is doing something. I got to keep this up.
Your mental state starts changing, and then your confidence starts changing as well too, and that translates to like your relationships in life, your friendships, your work ethics, work itself. Everything starts to kind of improve and everything kind of comes together. So like if you don't have that base foundation of like taking care of yourself and your fitness and your health, everything in your life is going to show that. So whether it's work or your family, if you're hitting the gym and you're being consistent and you have that confidence, you're able to not only like help and motivate the people around you, but you bring that energy as well too. So it's extremely beneficial, and it's definitely something that a lot of people overlook and don't take seriously when they really should. Like I used to play a lot of video games. I have a lot of buddies that play a lot of video games, but I remember like when I was in college, I had a roommate that would game all the time, and it's like you can spend a couple hours every day playing a game, leveling up a character, but you can also do the same thing in your life. Right? So like you can spend a couple hours a day at the gym and you're gaining XP, you're gaining weight, you're the character that you're evolving, or you can sit there and look at a screen and do it online, which is a lot easier.
100%, man. That is so true. That is so true. It's kind of like, this is kind of like a game. If you think about it, this is a game. But like, do you want to evolve?
Simulation, right?
Everything is simulation. No, it's like, as you said, that character, that's just a virtual electronic image. People spend hours and hours and hours like so invested in that, but they don't take care of themselves. And it's like, that could be literally you.
That could be you.
In real life. That could be your life, right?
And when that system becomes old, or that game becomes old, like all that progress you put in is gone. But if that was you, it's not gonna. Obviously, as you get older, you get weaker and shit happens, but it's not the same.
Yeah, 100%. Well, hopefully we don't get weaker for a very long time. I think that's a whole different topic, but I think like if you're doing this naturally and you are progressing, like people progress in terms of their bodybuilding career well into their 40s and even early 50s in some places. So I mean, you're young and we're both young, but we got a long track record. So that's like the exciting part too. It's like, wow, imagine where you're going to be in time. Right. So I think that's awesome, man. So like, obviously you got some good like mental benefits, and then like did you start just kind of following workouts you found online, or like how did you even know what to do when you first got in the gym?
Another one of my roommates in college, he was a pretty big dude. He had a good physique and he was hitting the gym frequently, and he kind of taught me a little bit, and then I kind of dove deep into the research. I watched a lot of Jeff Nippard.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, so it's I actually I stole a lot of his workouts off his YouTube videos, and I followed that for a while. But that's the other thing, because there's so much information, it's hard to know where to start.
Yeah.
Right. So like eventually I figured out, okay, like I need to have a workout split that I'll follow. The thing that took me a really long time to figure out is how beneficial tracking your workouts is. When I had actually sat down, I made a spreadsheet. I put my workout in there and I started tracking like the weight I was lifting and the amount of reps and stuff. That is extremely important. And it
Yeah.
sounds like it's like really confusing and it's a lot of work, but it actually makes your life so much easier.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, they'll go to the gym and they're just like, okay, I should go do that or I should go do that. And they just kind of like wandering around doing random stuff. But when you have a program and you follow it and you know what you lifted last time you hit that workout, you know you should theoretically, if you're getting the nutrition and stuff, be able to push a little bit harder than that last time. And then you just keep progressing on that.
100%, man. So overlooked. And
Yeah.
as you said, if you're tracking, you set yourself in a position where you know when you're making progress and you will
Yeah.
consistently make progress versus if you just go in and say, oh, I'm hitting chest today. What looks fun today? I don't
Yeah.
know. Like you might have an okay workout, might make some gains off the start, but you're leaving so many gains on the table. And
Yeah.
how do you know if you're progressing? So
Yeah.
I
And
think
that's the
that's
other
awesome.
thing too. Like if you're going the opposite way and you're not progressing and you're actually lifting less, you wouldn't know unless you're tracking it, right?
It's
Like
true.
obviously sometimes you can feel it, but
Yeah.
it helps in a lot of ways.
Yeah, man. No, that
But yeah.
definitely makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I remember when we first chatted, you had already had some like structure with your training and had been tracking your numbers, which was really, really valuable. So then I guess like that was a kind of training side of things. And from a nutrition side, is that something that you thought of right away when you first started training, or is that like something that you thought of only once you had like already began training consistently?
Yeah, like for me, I didn't have much fat on my body, but I didn't have much muscle either. So like for me, I knew that I just had to eat. I had to eat more and that was it. So I remember making like rice and chicken or rice and beef and just like trying to eat as much as I could. But that was very on and off. Like I'd go through points where I'd eat a lot and I'd be really organized with it, and then I'd stop eating,
Mm-hmm.
or I'd slow down a lot and I'd fall behind, and then I'd lose a lot of the weight. So for me, like keeping weight on and gaining weight is the hard point.
Mm-hmm.
Other people gain too much weight and they're trying to lose it, but
Yeah.
everyone has a different struggle, right? So it's fine tuning the diet and finding a way to make it easy is like
Yeah.
the most important thing.
100%, man. And we're just talking at your check-in about
Yeah,
like creating systems for your day and like recognizing, okay, if I'm slipping back into old habits, how do I stop that and like
yeah.
change that, right? So I think that's definitely powerful. And then I guess when we started, so you had already started training, and like what was your starting body weight before, like not when we started, but like when you first started? Do you remember?
I don't even know, man, but it was probably low. Like when we
Mm-hmm.
first started, that was a low point for a long time. Like
Mm-hmm.
I was pretty consistent around like between 155 and 165, I think, for like a long time.
Mm-hmm.
When we started, I was at 151, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think based on that picture that I just showed you, I think that was probably at like 140,
That's what I
honestly.
was gonna say if I
Yeah,
had to guess.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, we're looking at that. So 140 now we're in high 160s ish. So like
yeah,
that's and we're not talking about just like there's a difference between weight gain and a productive building phase, you know.
yeah,
Like your gains have been pretty clean, and the good thing is that when we started, you weren't holding on to that much body fat, so we had a good runway of like adding tissue without things getting out of hand, and our gains have been pretty clean just because we've been focusing on like a good rate of gain and kind of um, not gaining too fast and just making sure nutrition was in a good place for you. And what do you think was like one of the key takeaways that you learned when we first started working together in terms of just like maybe nutritionally first?
I had never tracked calories before. I
Okay.
always like looked at it. I'm like, yeah, it's gonna be way too confusing. I'm not gonna get into that.
Mm,
So for me, it was just like trying to eat as much as possible, and it never worked out because I was always going back and forth. But when I started with you and you had laid it out to me and kind of like taught me actually how it worked, I
hmm.
was kind of blown away at how simple it actually is and how much of a benefit it actually is. Because like that made the biggest difference, to be honest, is actually like logging the food and being able to see where I am for calories, where I am for protein and carbs and stuff. And then
Hmm.
like you start to think more about what you're eating. Because then you're like, okay, how do I fill this gap? what foods do I have in my fridge that can help me get there, right? So
Yeah,
like
man.
that's honestly that's like the most important thing if you want to change your body is figure out what you need to be eating and the amounts. And
Yeah,
it's
man.
not that difficult. Like it's super easy. Everyone always tries to make it seem all confusing and stuff, and everyone thinks it's confusing. It's really simple.
I'm glad you said that because you're right. A lot of people do have that big just mental barrier with like, no, it's they don't even try or maybe they just don't know how to start and they're like, it's too complicated. I just won't touch it. And then they spin their wheels for such a long period of time. It's like, okay,
Yeah,
if you just except there's like a tiny learning curve that you're going to go through, but then you're set up,
yeah.
to make awesome progress.
And
So,
like there's so much mixed information online, right? Like people will look up like how do I lose fat or how do I gain muscle, and there's
mhm.
thousands of different videos that you can watch, but just set up your macros
Yeah.
to a point where you're steadily gaining but not too fast, and just work with that. Like it's not, you don't have to be super restrictive. You don't have to cut out entire food groups and stuff. Like
Yeah.
it's not as complicated as they make it seem.
100%, man. I like to keep things as simple as possible, but no simpler than they need to be. I think that's a saying from like
Yeah.
Einstein or whatever. But I think, yeah, I think that was something that you picked up pretty quick too. And like, what were some initial learnings about your day? Like, how did you okay, I have these new macro totals and that I have to hit. Like, how did you go about trying to make your day fit with hitting those? Like, what were some initial things that you went through for that?
For what, like meal timing?
Yeah,
Kinda?
just in terms of like, okay, you got these three numbers or three ranges that you want to hit for these macros, and
Yeah.
then like, how did you then build your day of eating? Like, what kind of process did you go through
Yeah,
with
I was
that?
kind of struggling at first, because my eating was all over the place. Like some days I wouldn't eat breakfast is the main thing that I was doing wrong. I wouldn't eat anything for breakfast, and then I'd go to work and I'd get so tied up with work that by the end of the day, I still hadn't eaten anything. So
Mm,
it's like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, I still haven't eaten. And then I'm trying to pack everything in from 6 o'clock till like I go to sleep.
yeah,
Right. So for me, the biggest thing was like wake up, have something easy to make. And like, I don't like making breakfast because I don't like having to clean up after myself in the morning.
gotcha.
So for me, it was smoothies. I make a smoothie that has good protein, good carbs, giving me energy for a bit.
Hmm.
And then lunch is still something I struggle with. We were just talking about that. I need to
Yeah.
figure out something to bring to work. And then at the end of the day, I have a dinner that fills a little bit of the gap, and then I
Hmm.
have another like protein shake smoothie kind of thing that I make at the end of the day, which is
Okay.
like very dense in calories and protein. So that always just fills the void.
Yeah. Yeah. I think and right there, you just described like that's your system. Of course, the only systematic change that we need to make was like your lunch that we just talked about.
The
But like,
middle of the day, that's what kills me.
middle of the day. But other than that, you have like, okay, I'm gonna have this smoothie for breakfast. Then I got to do something for lunch that we're gonna change, and then I fill in the gaps with dinner and the smoothie later. Even just having that structure and be able to describe that already puts you in a place where you're much more likely to make this just easy for you to hit your numbers,
Yep.
right? And I think that's the one thing that people don't do is like set at least just some sort of window of time where you're going to have your meals and you know roughly how many meals you're going to have per day and keep that consistent. It doesn't have to be the same thing every single day or the same exact times, but having some sort of idea just makes things so that you don't have to think so much.
Yeah. And
Like,
that's what happens when you start tracking your food, because
mm-hmm.
you start to realize and you start to get like these certain foods or these key things that if you're lacking in one area, you know what to go grab
Mm-hmm.
because you've done it before.
Yeah.
So like once you start building that up, it's like kind of like you're building up an arsenal of food in your fridge, and like you know what tools to go use, or you're building up a toolbox. I don't know.
Yeah.
But once you realize, it becomes very easy, and then it becomes a habit.
Exactly, man.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's like, okay, here's my carb sources, here are my protein sources, and here are my fat sources. And we have that like Venn diagram that we give clients at the beginning, just to like, here are your carbs, here's your your fats, here's your protein sources, and here's a mix of them, right? Because at the beginning, you're like, okay, I got 40 grams of carbs. Like, what the heck am I going to need to get that? And now you're like, oh, I'll have this banana and this rice cake or whatever. You know?
Like, what is a carb?
Yeah, exactly. So, but once you get over that learning curve, then you go for it. And you, I'm sure, like you notice, okay, night and day difference with even just your training performance too, right? Like your strength gains.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I was hitting my workouts consistently before, but because I wasn't eating, I was actually losing strength
Mm,
consistently. And like that's what kind of initially pushed me to sign up. And immediately once I started getting fuel in my body, it was like PR after PR after
yeah.
PR every week. Yeah, it felt good. It felt
You
really
gotta
good.
love that. You gotta love that. And the pumps and everything too, and just
Yeah,
your energy is
yeah.
just much better. So that's amazing. And what do you think, like, because obviously, you know, we the fuel goes in and then that allows us, like, we have better inputs so we can have better output in the gym and with performance. So I mean, apart from like the training benefits and everything, what kind of physique changes have you seen? I guess what are like main differences in your physique? Obviously, I have a good idea in my head, but like from your perspective, like what are some main physique changes that you've seen?
Just fuller. Like everything, like my legs have gotten a lot better. I've always had skinny legs. I've always had chicken legs. Um, but I'm starting to see some muscle mass come into my legs, which is nice, and I'm
Mm,
starting to feel some more strength, a lot more core strength, and then the lats are starting to blow up, and the delts as well too.
yeah.
But like I've always like delts, chest, lats, my whole upper back, and then my legs, everything. It
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, man. Yeah. I say like you got a good V taper. As I was saying before, like your bone structure is good and your insertion points for the muscles are good. So like once we just added a little bit onto the frame, like even in your form videos when you're doing your rows, I'm like, you got some wings popping in there, man. Like it's just, it's just cool, right? It's cool to see. And it's kind of just you can see, okay, I'm training hard, I got the right fuel, we got good programming, and then boom, gains just arrive.
yeah,
And then it's just we found like a good sweet spot, I think, for like food and also volume and exercise selection. And like you're pretty good at sending form videos, so we've done a lot of technique analysis, and like your form is in a really really good spot. It was already pretty decent when we came along, but I think it's really crisp now, and like the way you lift looks like you're experienced and looks like you lift, you know, like when I watch your form videos, it's like it looks like you know what you're doing out there, you know.
yeah. It's
Which is awesome.
I've watched a lot of YouTube videos, and that helped. But then all the fine tuning week after week, like from you reviewing it, and then
Mm-hmm.
me even watching, like taking the video and watching it over,
Mm-hmm.
it helps. Because like I'll take the video for Paris, and then I'll sit there between my next set and I'll watch the video, and it's like, okay, I should do this, this, and this,
Yeah.
and like that, it makes a huge difference because you don't realize like if there's a slight thing that feels a little bit awkward, you don't realize until you watch yourself do it. And then you're like, okay, I can adjust that. And then you go adjust it and you feel the difference it makes on the activation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally true. My coach calls it watching your gameplay footage. Like
Yeah. Yeah,
athletes,
exactly.
they spend hours reviewing
Yeah.
their tapes.
There's
Why
a
do
reason why they
nobody
do
does
it.
in the gym? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you perfect it. I still do it. I like I still take 4 videos and I've been lifting
Yeah.
forever because there's always things that you like. It might feel different, and then you watch it like, man, what was I could have changed that, you know, could have made that
Yeah.
better. So I think that's awesome, man. It's a good like recipes for success. It's kind of like, okay, we got the nutrition tracking on point. We quantified things, we refined technique, we brought the intensity and then consistency, and boom, like things happen. It's like you got the recipe for success, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And then kind of like, you know, what kind of things have you seen change in your life when maybe you start adding some more structure and started like dialing things in a little bit more with your fitness journey? Like I know we talked about out the gates, but then once you kind of took that extra step and like really started taking things more specifically, like have you seen any sort of differences in like your day-to-day life from that?
Yeah. Everything's just more dialed in. Definitely a lot more confidence and a lot less anxiety.
Okay.
Um, like when you get up in the morning, like it's just you feel more motivated for your day. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
more excited to get going and get moving. It just optimizes everything, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Yeah.
really know how else to put it.
Yeah.
It's just beneficial in all aspects of your life, and I know that's like a very broad range, but it's simply like it's what it does.
Yeah, and that's like the ripple effect, right? That we're saying
Yeah,
the ripple effect. So that's amazing, man. That's really amazing. And again, I'm like when you and showed me that initial photo, we were just talking about this. I was like, freaking awesome. Like it's just insane. And I think people just need to realize that, like,
Should I
it's
show them?
yeah, because on YouTube they'll see it. So
That
this,
was the original. That was the day I made the decision to start working. Like, it's just skin and bone.
yeah.
Obviously,
So
it can get worse than that, but yeah.
no, but it's all relative, right? And now you should go on Instagram or go on our website. You probably see pictures of Brent. Like, it's night and day difference. And like anybody can do it, man. Like, and not to discount your hard work. I mean, just like, it's possible. Like that guy, I'm sure that guy might have had some self-doubt too, but that's like totally normal. But then once you make that first few steps and you start to see the progress, you're like, okay, something's happening, man.
And that's really what people don't realize. Like, I have a lot of buddies that I've gotten into the gym or got motivated to get into it, and there's a lot of fear, I find, and people kind of like set it up in their head that like they can't do it, but literally anybody can do it. It's not that difficult. It's just you have to start, and you have to stay consistent. A lot of people start and they stop, and then they never go back. It's consistency that's what's gonna get you to a point where you're actually seeing a difference. If you don't have the consistency, then it's not gonna happen. But as long as you're consistent over time, you're gonna see a lot of benefit.
Yeah, totally true, man. So do you find that, like most people you talk to that are more in the beginner stages of their journey, it is kind of that fear and inconsistency? Is that like the two main things that you find just hold people back? Yeah. So what would you say to like people that maybe find themselves in that kind of on and off scenario, or just are like, don't think that they can do it? Like, what are some things that maybe you use, like mindset tricks that you use when you start to like get over that?
Nothing's gonna change unless you go and make it change. So like, if you're sitting there wanting something different, if you want to look different, or if you want to feel different, go make it happen. Like, nobody else can make it happen except for you, and you have the full ability to go do it. So go do it. Like, people are way too comfortable being comfortable. If it's uncomfortable being at the gym, then that's a good thing. That's where you grow.
Yeah.
It's the same thing as any other aspect of your life. Like, don't seek comfort. It's not what you want. You're not growing from that. Go get some new experience and get to the gym and start focusing on your health.
I love it, man. Very inspirational. There's a good thing I like to say is like, there's a point where comfort becomes uncomfortable because you start associating comfort with like stagnancy and like you're not growing anymore. So that's very cool, man. Really important stuff. Awesome, man. And I want to talk a little bit about kind of like our medium-term plans. So obviously we've done like an extended gaining phase here, and then we actually have a trip coming up in February. So we're going to press the fat loss button and run like roughly an 8-week fat loss phase. So we're looking nice and diced on the beach, and then we're going to continue into that building phase. So what's kind of like your mindset into going to the fat loss phase? Because obviously, like, you know, going from a place where the focus is just build, like what are you going to flip in your mindset in regards to that? And like, how are you going to change your perspective on things?
I think I'm gonna have to get everything dialed in a lot more. Like, just more consistent on what I'm putting in my body, and more consistent with the workouts, and just stay focused. But honestly, it's I'm not worried about it because I got a good coach, and he makes it easy for me. So I just do what he says, and I see the results.
You do all the work.
I spent so much time in the gym, and I spent so much money on gym memberships over like years of my life. And like, within 6 months of training, I've seen so much more gain. So like, if you're already spending the time and if you're already spending the money, why not spend a little bit more money and just optimize it? You know, like, a lot of people think like having a coach or a trainer is like way too expensive, or it's going to be way more time intensive and a lot more difficult. It saves you a lot of time, and it makes everything so much more efficient. So like, you're already wasting the time. Why not? invest in it, right?
100%, man. You're preaching to the choir, and
Yeah.
I feel like if people really also, the time investment is not as much people think, and then also in terms of like investing financially, like they probably blow away. Most people blow way more money on Uber Eats and partying than
100%.
it would totally like triple what they would be paying like for like a usually good coaching, right? So like. It's again, I'm super biased, but I also have a coach who is relatively, a big investment for me because also US dollars, and in Canada the things.
Yes.
But like I would do it again and again and again. I've never regretted any investment I've made in terms of like hiring coaches, because I've had 3 different coaches. Two of them are pretty solid, one not so much. And any investment I've made in my fitness journey or into learning, I've never regretted. And I think, so.
And that's the thing that was kind of surprising to me too, is like my coach has a coach. Like you're obviously a very experienced guy, you know what you're doing, and you're very knowledgeable with all of this, but you still have a guy that's helping you. So like that just shows how beneficial it is to have somebody else on like a third perspective looking in and tailoring your routine, right?
You need that objectivity, because we can also get in our own heads. I also like, because I don't have to think about anything. That's another reason. And most of the amazing coaches I know also have coaches. And there's a reason. There's a reason. It's not that like our ego can get in the way and be like, oh, I know how to train and eat and like whatever. It's like, okay, well then why aren't you seeing the progress you want? Like, it's like, I'm sorry, but like, hey, I'm always more dialed in when I know my coach is looking at my stuff. It's like, it's kind of like, would you do your homework if your teacher wasn't going to check it? Maybe not as well, right? So
that's the thing, right? It holds you accountable, because nothing's worse than taking your check-in video and just having nothing to say and bad news,
well,
some weeks, man, I'm like, oh, I don't want to go to the gym, like I don't want to eat, and then I'm like, oh, but I have to send this video to Parris later. I gotta get this shit done.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's what I want. I'm not a military style coach. I'd never get like mad at that, but like it's more just the accountability is good, and it's part of my job is to give you guys that push so that you can be consistent, and so we can make the progress we want. Like, so I think that's awesome, man. So I'm excited about this. Like, are you excited to see what you look like a little bit leaner now that you have like a foundation of some muscle on you?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
But that's not the end of it. So like that phase is just gonna go into another phase, and it's gonna get better and better. So I'm very excited, but I know we got a long way to go. So
yeah, man, this is what I call like the bridge phase in between your building phases, and I like that you have that long-term mindset, because like that's how we'll really make those like wow type progress, right? That's amazing, man. Thank you so much for sharing this. This has been pretty insightful. I really enjoyed this conversation. Okay, so just give me maybe some final things that you feel like people need to hear about their fitness journey. I know you've given a lot of tidbits, but like, what do you think people at home need to hear that maybe they're not seeing the same progress that they want to, or like any sort of mindset tips that you have that have helped you in like lock it in? Like, what do you think people need to hear?
If you're not training, go train. Get out of your comfort zone. It's not that scary. You'll be okay. You'll survive. If you are training and you're not seeing like the progress you want to be seeing, optimize your training. Go with Truth Body System. But,
I didn't pay him.
like if you, I'm paying you.
yeah.
If you are training, you may as well optimize it. If you're spending money on the gym membership and you're spending the time in the gym, then make sure you're doing things right and make sure you're not wasting time. Like you're already investing your time and money, so make sure it's optimized. If you're not training, then you should be training. Like just go get it done. Stop procrastinating it. It will literally change your life, and it's not that hard.
I love it, man. I love it. Yeah. It's the wake up call some people need to hear.
I find a lot of people like they struggle to get to the gym. Like as long as you get your foot in the door of the gym, you're gonna have the workout. You just have to make yourself get there, and then you'll work out. Like that's the hardest point is getting off the couch and going there. Once you're there, you'll get it done.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. I like hearing these things from you because sometimes when I feel like I'm saying it, I feel like I just have so many biases and people are like, yeah, it's easy for you to say like your life revolves around this stuff. But like, you know, so it's good to hear it from you and hear you say kind of similar themes too. Yeah, so that's awesome, Brent. Again, this was amazing. I think that's most of the things I wanted to cover here. Is there any other final things that you wanted to cover before we head off here?
No, just thank you for your work, man.
Oh,
it's been great.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for coming on, and I think people are going to get lots of value.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.
All right.